Total Shock Fiction. I'm your host, M. Pandico, aka Dr. Shock, the most shocking scumbag journalist on the planet. I'm also author and publisher, and we are here today to talk about Black fantasy. So let's get into it. Black fantasy is a term that I've coined. It may be floating around out there. Some people may be referring to works of fantasy by Black authors telling Black stories as quote unquote Black fantasy. However, I have not seen it used in a common context. I haven't seen any widespread usage of the term Black fantasy. If you Google or search Black fantasy, it brings up Black speculative fiction. Now, the first thing we have to talk about when dealing with Black fantasy is this umbrella term that has been used for a long time now. I believe it came out in, if not the late 80s, it came out as far back as the 90s. They've been using this term, Black speculative fiction. So any work of fantasy, sci-fi, horror, or other genre mashup fiction, or genre mashups, or any other kind of genre fiction by Black authors telling Black stories with Black characters, it is labeled Black speculative fiction. Why does that term exist? Is the question we should be asking ourselves. What is Black speculative fiction? I don't like how it sounds, and I don't like what it means. When we deal with the fantasy genre, we're talking about fantasy, horror, sci-fi. That all falls under the umbrella of fantasy. From medieval fantasy with fairies and ogres and monster slayers to urban fantasy, horror, sci-fi. All of these make up the fantasy realm, right? And then there's different categories. The publishing industry loves categories because they can categorize things and they can minimize them to a core concept to mass produce and market to a demographic based on numbers. That's why they want you to say, well, it's this show meets this show. That's the concept. That's how you pitch to studios. That's how you pitch to the publishers. Well, my book, it's like Blade meets fucking Breaking Bad. It's about a meth dealer who's fighting vampires. They're gonna go, "Oh, okay, Blade meets Breaking Bad. Oh, we haven't heard of that." It's not gonna work. No. Fuck no. What do you mean? The demographic who watches Breaking Bad isn't the demographic who watches Blade. That's what they think. So they're gonna say, no, you can't do a meth dealer fighting vampires. Blade meets Breaking Bad. You can't do that. That's what they're gonna say. And actually, that's a good idea. I think I'm gonna write that today. That's why I have my own publishing, so I can turn that into a story today, put it out on my Substack on my website as an official publication as a one story OVA short story, and then adapt that into a book or include it in a book and then release it for publication on Amazon through KDP. So that's why what's very valuable to us as indie creators in this day and time is avenues like YouTube, Amazon, social media, the way that we can put everything out, Kickstarter, all these things. So when we talk about fantasy, sci-fi, or horror in a non-Black context that doesn't deal with Africanality or Black stories being told by Black creators, Black writers, Black artists, Black authors, we don't say, well, that's a white fantasy. That's Asian fantasy. They might try to throw that term out there to try to, niche it down, but we don't say these terms. We say, oh, well, that's a martial arts movie. That's a science fiction movie. That's a horror flick. So why, if it's Black, all of a sudden when we do Get Out or we do Candyman or we do something in the Black realm of fantasy, that's Black speculative fiction all of a sudden? Why are they putting in that label? They are putting it in this label because this is a form of contextualized racism within publishing and within pop culture and with the way the Black stories are presented to the world. This is a historical usage of racist categorization that they use to minimize Black storytelling so they can minimize Black imagination and Black perception of reality itself. Despite this, some of the biggest, most influential works of Black fantasy have had a major lasting influence on popular culture. You need look no further than 1998's Blade, starring Wesley Snipes. Prior to Blade, they could not adapt superhero movies to the big screen. Yes, Tim Burton's Batman was a hit. That's because Batman is already a staple in American culture. Yes, the Superman movies were a hit. That's because Superman was already a staple. They already had the Adam West Batman show. They already had the Superman serials back in the day, and a Superman TV show. Superman and Batman were already there. So adapting them to movie, they'd already been on TV. So that's not a big leap. But taking characters straight out of the comics and turning them into movies, it was fail after fail after fail. The Captain America they made, the Fantastic Four they made that never came out. There was a Nick Fury movie with a white guy, or well, with a white Nick Fury. Yeah. There was white Nick Fury before Sam Jackson was Nick Fury, before they decided to make him black. There was the original white Nick Fury. There's a movie of that. I seen it on TV back in the day. Those were all flops. And a few years before Blade, Spawn came out. A black commando dies, goes to hell, comes back as a demon, hell spawn, fighting monsters. Similar realm as Blade, a little bit different, a little more religious iconography, a little different vibe and tone, but a black superhero with supernatural powers nonetheless. Spawn is a failure. That movie was a failure. It was not a big success. You had The Mask was successful, a little bit more niche than a typical superhero, but a comic book adaptation. You had the Incredible Hulk show with Bill Bixby back in the 70s, which was a success. However, it took a very grounded approach to the Incredible Hulk, and it was a TV adaptation, not movie adaptation. So prior to Blade, there was no successful formula for taking comic books, turning them into movies. What is the dominant genre that killed film? Superhero movies, right? And now they're using these AI scripts to crank out these totally stupid movies. Movies and TV are basically dead. That's why I'm looking to different media now. I'm watching YouTube channels. I'm looking at books and novels and fiction, and I'm reading comics. I'm getting back into comics again because TV and movies is done. Dunzo. They're not doing good movies. They're not doing good TV. The only hope I have this year for a good movie is Evil Dead Burn. And I want to send healing energy to Bruce Campbell at this time and to affirm his wellness and health and being and long lasting life for many years to come, as he is going through his healing journey. We want to speak healing energy to the legendary Bruce Campbell, who portrayed Ash Williams in the Evil Dead saga, one of the most iconic and greatest horror franchises in the horror genre. So we want to hope that this new Evil Dead Burn, is going to be at least one good movie that comes out this year, and specifically within the horror genre, because horror is effectively dead. Horror is effectively dead. Yes, we got Sinners last year, a work of black fantasy and great horror. That's rare. Don't expect to see that again unless Coogler does another horror movie. Don't expect to see that again unless Coogler comes out with that X-Files movie. That's rare. We don't get that a lot. And even still, they snubbed Coogler for the Oscar and gave it to One Battle After Another when the movies don't even compare. And that's a whole different conversation. I can't even get into that right now. We're going to have to do a whole nother video about why Coogler got snubbed for Best Director. He got Best Screenplay. They gave Michael B. the Oscar for Best Actor, but they snubbed Delroy for supporting actor, and they snubbed Coogler for Best Director. It should have been a clean sweep, Sinners across the board. We should have got Best Female Supporting Actor too. It should have been clean sweep across the board, all Sinners. It was the best movie all year. It's one of the best movies made in the last decade. Should have been a clean sweep across the board. But that's a different conversation. So, Black Fantasy, Blade. Blade created the template formula for how to adapt comic books to movies. Every superhero movie in the early 2000s prior to the MCU was following the Blade formula. Spider-Man, X-Men, Fantastic Four, Hulk, and then the Incredible Hulk was the transition into MCU. But the original Hulk, Fantastic Four, had a little bit more of that comedy humor. They leaned a little more comedy with Fantastic Four, opposed to X-Men and Hulk. Spider-Man had some of the comedy in it. That's that Sam Raimi influence. And Sam Raimi's part of the conversation because, of course, Sam Raimi created Evil Dead, and then he created the Spider-Man trilogy, which, alongside the X-Men trilogy, opened the doors for the expansion of superheroes into mainstream pop stardom. So you have Spider-Man, but the grounded realism approach of Spider-Man, the original X-Men, Fantastic Four, that's the Blade formula. Take out of the comic book, change the outfits, make them look more realistic, make it more grounded, make it a little grittier, a little darker. That was the approach in the early 2000s. Batman Begins, Christopher Nolan's Batman. With Batman Begins and The Dark Knight, it was drastically different from Batman Returns, Batman Forever, Batman and Robin with the fucking nipples on the bat suit. We were way far from that with Batman Begins. And they tried it with Superman Returns. I don't know how big of a hit Superman Returns was. But they did the same thing with Superman Returns. That was the model for superhero movies in the 2000s. Watchmen. That was the model. Blade established that. Blade and Blade 2 were massive hits. Blade Trinity, I'm not sure if financially it was a massive hit. Everyone hates it. It has its flaws. It also is a pretty good guilty pleasure movie. I mean, it's one of those really great popcorn classics. That early 2000s dark fantasy action horror of an underworld of a Resident Evil that Blade originated in 98. So Blade Trinity, it's a Blade movie, regardless. And I like Blade Trinity more than Blade 2 because I don't like Blade 2. It's too Guillermo. I don't like Guillermo's storytelling really that much. I like Hellboy, the original, but I don't really love Guillermo's storytelling. I don't really like his style. It's just a little too fairy tale fantasy vibes. And I don't like fairy tale fantasy. And that's the other thing. There's a misconception when we say fantasy, people think fairy tales, fairies and magic and wands and Harry Potter and shit. Fantasy is not excluded to that. Fantasy is anything you make up with your imagination is fantasy. Tokusatsu is fantasy. Kamen Rider, Ultraman, Power Rangers. That shit's all fantasy. Anything made up, these spectacular stories with characters with powers and shit like that, it's all fantasy. Horror is fantasy. Shit you make up. The more you can conceive of or the more you can perceive or believe, the more vast your human experience can be in reality because your perception dictates reality. You literally bend reality through your perception of life. And that's why shit gets minimized and put in these boxes and these genres and these labels to confine shit in. So, black speculative fiction is a term that I myself, as a black author, do not vibe with, rock with, support, co sign, or claim. I'm a black fantasy author. I'm not a black speculative fiction author. They also try to use the urban fiction tag or handle. If it's black and it's in an urban setting, that's urban fiction. That's a hood book. That's street lit. And while urban fiction has its own power and tradition as street lit, I'm a fan of Quan Foy. I've read the Midnight Trilogy by Sister Souljah. I am a student of Donald Goines, the originator of urban fiction from the 70s hardcore street pulp tradition, which then evolved into modern day urban fiction, where you get books now like She Married a Trapper 5 are the number one books in the urban fiction and African American category on Amazon. But that's just the urban fiction lane being basically boxed into, okay, hood books, hood stories, ghetto drama, hood books. That's what they've turned urban fiction into. But they also have used urban fiction to say, well, if it's a black author in an urban setting, that's urban fiction. And if it's too fantastical, then they just say, well, that's black speculative fiction. Why can't a book about real life written by a black author be literary fiction? Why, excuse me, why do they have to call it, well, that's urban? That's black speculative. You see what I'm saying? These are these labels that they're putting in. So let's pivot here. I want to talk about the void that black fantasy fills in media and entertainment and fiction presently. I've been watching a lot of the black comic book channels. Shout out Blurred Without Fear, shout out Black Comic Lords, and I've been getting a vantage point on the black comic book space, blurred culture, and where everything is and where everything stands presently. And there is a definitely an underserved market for black fantasy with black readers, black creators, and black people who want to see black characters with black faces in black spaces in their fantasy and fiction, in comic book form, in movies and TV. And we can't overlook books. There's a resurgence of books with Book Talk and BookTube. A lot of it is driven by the dark fantasy romance and the monster smut books, right? But Gen Z wants real books. They like paperbacks. They like to hold a real book. They want to hold a real book in their hands and flip through it and read it. They like analog media. So we need to use that to our advantage, and we need to stop overlooking books as a medium and get back to books. Back in the fucking 1800s, motherfuckers was writing novels. They were writing novels back when they had a pen and quill. They were writing novels. So why, with all these computers and everything, are we not looking at novels, reading novels, writing novels? We're spending too much time tapped into the phone, tapped into the screen, and we need to be using our time to read as well. We need to dive into imagination, because a book really puts you in a vast spectrum of imagination where anything can be possible. And writing fiction gives you the ability to create the biggest, most extravagant storyline you can think of. You don't need any money, you don't need any production budget, you don't need any permission. You can write whatever you want. There's a lot happening in fiction, comic books, and in the indie space for black fantasy and black stories, which is why I'm presenting this term black fantasy. And I'm declaring right now that Total Shock Fiction is the home of black fantasy. So here at Total Shock Fiction, I am releasing, writing, publishing black fantasy books. There's 30 Total Shock Fiction black fantasy books on Amazon. About 30. Two of my books weren't necessarily black fantasy, but we have 30 books of black fantasy on Amazon. And I will be promoting works of black fantasy that I come across. And I want to put you up on game of what's out there. So you have Rodney Barnes is one of the leading voices in comic books for black stories right now. You have Blackula, Return of the King, which is a direct sequel to Blackula and Scream Blackula Scream, the iconic black horror vampire movie starring William Marshall, who was a Shakespearean actor. He played Othello. He brought dignity to the role and elevated it from B-movie schlock to high caliber acting, especially in the second one. The first one is still very Universal Monsters, Blackula, but Blackula was a huge hit. It didn't only go to the urban audience or the black audience. It exploded. Blackula was a huge hit. Monsters have always been popular in American cinema. I Was a Teenage Werewolf was a huge hit. The Universal Monster movies back in the day were a huge hit. Dracula, Frankenstein, Wolfman. So monsters have always captivated our imagination, and it has always captivated us as an audience to see something more spectacular than what the mundane reality seems to be. And reality is always stranger than fiction. So it's fantasy. It's all fantasy. It's not speculative. That's limiting. They're trying to call it speculative. And also there's another emerging term called Afro fantasy, which I am purposely sidestepping and coining black fantasy before they label us Afro fantasy. Because The problem with that is they want to label Afro fantasy so they can co-opt the movement and the wave, make $1 billion off it, and then shut out all the indie creators and the actual black fantasy writers and storytellers the same way they did with Afrofuturism. Afrofuturism was a rising genre. It emerged out of black speculative fiction. They took Afrofuturism, they put it in Black Panther, they made $1 billion off it, and then Afrofuturism went away. What Afrofuturism is out there right now? Not much. And what Afrofuturism is out there from black creators telling black stories that are innovative and empowering to push the imagination? I'll wait. So we're intentionally sidestepping Afro fantasy and we're not adopting that. That's what they're giving as a label to books like Children of Blood and Bone, which has a movie in development, is what I hear. So expect to be seeing a big Children of Blood and Bone movie down the pipeline here. It's been supposedly in the works for a number of years at Disney, from what I heard, from what Tomi Adeyemi said. So we'll see how that comes out and how faithful it is and what kind of impact it generates. But we, as indie creators, as black fantasy storytellers, we need to get out front and declare this space and plant our flag in this space and create our own projects and support our own projects and have our own shit and not wait for the entertainment industry to co-opt our movements, make $1 billion off it, and then shut it down. Because Children of Blood and Bone made a huge impact. It echoes the sword and soul tradition created by Charles R. Saunders back in the early 80s, 1980, 1981, I believe, is the year Amaro Book 1 came out with his Amaro saga, Bliss in Paradise, Charles R. Saunders. So Children of Blood and Bone echoes that sword and soul tradition. I haven't read it. I don't read YA really, but from what I hear, very powerful, very innovative, definitely pushes the boundaries of black fantasy. However, it's already been sold. The rights of it have been sold to the entertainment industry in Hollywood. So that's not in our hands anymore. That's in the hands of the entertainment industry. So that's a different lane. That's a different lane from what I'm talking about. I'm talking about black owned stories created by black creators, owned, published, adapted, written by black creators without just handing them off. The problem is our goal is to get enough attention to get bought out by the industry instead of building our own pipeline. That's why you're not seeing the stories you want to see at Marvel. You're not seeing the stories you want to see at DC. You're seeing what they're willing to give you and what they want to show. They're showing you their fantasy. I seen a tremendous podcast. And the podcaster, she said, the reason why we're not being shown in these works of modern fantasy in the mainstream is because we are not a part of their fantasy. Once we're in their fantasy, it ceases to be a fantasy because they don't want us in their fantasy. That's their fantasy. That's why we ain't in it. That's why you're a sidekick, you're a butler, you're the help. They don't want you to be T'Challa. They don't want you. And that's the thing. They'll give you a T'Challa. That's it, though. They'll give you a one-off here and there. That's it, though. We should have 100 milestones. Dwayne McDuffie is a major pillar for black fantasy. He made a staple into black superheroes. He created Milestone, and we had Static Shock as a cartoon on TV alongside Justice League, alongside Superman. Because of Dwayne McDuffie, why don't we have 100 milestones, though? If he moved the goalpost closer for us to score these touchdowns, why haven't we followed his model? I know there's thousands of creators and storytellers who have their own universes, their own milestones, but a lot of people don't have the wherewithal to take the steps to build their own pipeline around it. They want to be bought out. They want someone to do the heavy lifting. You can't let people buy you out. You can't let people do the heavy lifting. You have to adapt it. You have to handle the business. You have to handle the structure. You have to handle the marketing. You have to publish it. You have to edit it. Don't have an editor. Don't have an agent. Build your own shit. If you got people, if you got a crew, you have a circle, that's cool. Work with them. But if you're solo dolo, do it on your own. Agents are gatekeepers. Editors are gatekeepers. They're muting your voice and they're keeping you out. It's not a prestige thing. Well, I have an agent, so I'm professional. I have an editor, so my books are good. No, your voice is being muted. Your agent is a fucking buffer to keep you in or out of the fucking game. Those are referees, nigga. I'm running past the nigga with the rock. 3-point, 3-point, 3-point. Fuck that shit. I don't need an editor. I don't need a fucking agent. Fuck a submission. I don't want Simon Schuster to publish my shit. Fuck Simon and Schuster, nigga. Fuck Penguin Books. Fuck Random, Penguin Random, and all these niggas. I don't want to write books for these niggas. I got my own shit. I don't want to write them no books. Let them make money off my shit, own my rights. Fuck that. Get up, stand up, fight for your rights, or you gonna die tonight them. Period, nigga. That's how this shit goes. We need more Aaron McGruders. Where's the next Boondocks? Adult Swim ruined Boondocks. Where's the new one? I know someone out there has a new Boondocks. Where's the new Afro Samurai? I found it. That's why I brought that up, because I want to tell y'all there is a new Afro Samurai. I want to spotlight an author named Tatiana Obi. Her last name is spelled O-B-E-Y, like obey, but it's pronounced Obi. Tatiana Obi. She created a book series called Sister Samurai, S-I-S-T-A-H, Sister Samurai, the Champloo mixes, book 1 and 2. And it's a female black samurai inspired by Afro Samurai, Samurai Champloo. It needs to be adapted into animation. It should already be an anime. We should have it out right now. It should already be adapted. Straight up. It should be adapted. So we have black creators out here creating epic stories. Rodney Barnes' Blackula. Why don't we have it in animation? It's a great comic. Why isn't it in animation? Blackula, Philadelphia, another Rodney Barnes series. His series Philadelphia, it got canceled. Why get canceled? That shit should have ran for 200 issues. You know what I mean? Should have ran for 200 issues. It should still be going. It was a great comic. So we need adaptations of Philadelphia, Blackula, Return of the King, Sister Samurai. There's a lot of great black creators out here. There's another book series called Amara, Rise of the shit. I can't think of the name right now. I'm gonna do a video on it, but it's another female black samurai book that stems from the lore of Yasuke the Black Samurai. They made that whack Netflix anime about it with Lakeith Stanfield. Well, there's a book that adapts that by the Fikes brothers, and their shit looks really dope. I haven't read it yet, but I got it sitting in my room on my desk. So there's black fantasy out here. There's black creators out here. So black fantasy, also another aspect of it, it isn't only black stories told by black authors and black storytellers and black creators. It's also darker and bolder than traditional fantasy. So ultimately, black fantasy can be adopted by non-black writers and non-black storytellers, not as a way of co-opting these black stories we're telling, but as a way of black fantasy not being limited by the black experience and becoming a full new genre within pop culture and within literature and fiction. Black fantasy can be the literal black experience denoting Africanality, or it can also mean, and it does mean darker, bolder stories than traditional fantasy. Black fantasy pushes the boundaries. It's not grim dark. That grim dark shit. What the fuck? That don't even sound like some shit I want to read. Oh, I write grim dark. Some depressing ass shit? No. Black fantasy. Darker, bolder, blacker. Exodus the darker, blackly. That's our slogan. Exodus the darker, blackly. Total Shock Fiction is the premier black fantasy publishing house in 2026. We have black fantasy on the scale of Marvel or DC, fully independent. 30 plus books on Amazon right now for Black fantasy. Some are urban fiction, some are myth punk, some are romance, dark fantasy, some are horror, action, survival. There's a broad spectrum with these books. There's 30 books up. The newest book out is called Hatred and Longing on American Soil. That one's gonzo, American politics. But let me get to the new shit. Now that I have these 30 plus books on Amazon, I decided I needed to pivot so that I can bring people into the shock verse through a core entry point that is not so complex and complicated to where people say, I don't know where to begin. I don't know where to start. I have your starting point. It's called Black We Are, Roar of the Lion. The first black superhero in comic books is not Lothar. Lothar was a sidekick. He was Mandrake the magician's sidekick. He was a prince in Africa over 7 kingdoms who decided to be a white magician's sidekick instead of ruling over the kingdoms in Africa. I'm not gonna claim him as the first black superhero. He was a sidekick. Sidekick. Shout out Bruce Campbell, Coach Boomer, from my Sky High fanatics out there. That was a great movie. That was a great damn movie. Why the black kid had to be the popsicle though? You see what I'm saying? Why the black kid had to be the popsicle? His powers, he turns into a puddle. He melts. That shit was funny though. But I'm saying. So this is what I'm talking about. We need to empower ourselves and we need to tell these stories. Like I was saying. So Lothar was a sidekick. I got sidetracked. Lothar was a sidekick. I'm not claiming him as the first black superhero. The first black superhero, if you look it up, and who I'm acknowledging and signifying, is Lion Man. Lion Man is the first black superhero. All Negro Comics #1 was created by a black journalist, black creators, black writers, black artists. They only got to do one issue because the paper distributors and the distributors of the comic and the paper suppliers refused to work with them so they could create another one, and they got blackballed out of publishing, so they couldn't do any more issues. That's how powerful this All Negro Comics #1 was. Lion Man was a black man from America who goes to Africa. His costume was a loincloth and an African headband, but it was because he was going undercover, under disguise, as one of the indigenous African people so he could walk among them without being identified as standing out. And he was there to protect the uranium deposits to prevent foreign powers from building nuclear bombs against the US. He was sent there by the United Nations on some Captain America shit. And this comic was one of the first depictions in art and fiction to show a black character kicking the ass of white characters. So he's fighting white guys and whooping their ass and beating them up. Similar to Dwayne Jones as Ben in Night of the Living Dead, where he's yelling at the white people saying, I'm in charge up here. You could be in charge down there in the basement. And he's got the rifle loaded. And he's like, nigga, fuck out of here. That kind of energy. And this is 1947 we're talking about with All Negro Comics #1. Lion Man is the first black superhero in American comics. There's also another powerful character that came out of Britain. He was a British Nigerian superhero called Power Man. He had a P with like a thunderbolt on his chest. They later changed his name to Power Bolt because Luke Cage is called Power Man. But Power Bolt, he's actually a public domain character. So if you search Power Man British Nigerian superhero or Power Bolt superhero, black Superman superhero, he's public domain. So you can take that, run with that, create your own black Superman. Yes, Dwayne McDuffie created Icon. We should have 50 black Supermans. There's 50 white Supermans. Let's make 50 black ones. So Lion Man, though, is the first black superhero. So what I did, being a publisher, being a writer and an author, I said, wow, how cool. Wouldn't it be dope if that was an updated comic book for now? And we had a new Lion Man who literally turns into a man beast with a lion head and he's clawing motherfuckers and fighting monsters. Wouldn't that be cool? So what did I do? I sat down and I wrote a short story. A short story is a one shot. It's the equivalent of a one shot comic book. It's the equivalent of a standalone movie or what they used to make in anime, an OVA, an original video animation, you can write a one short story and that can be used as a starting point to launch a franchise. You can expand that, adapt that into books, comics, TV, film, animation. So I said, let me take Lion Man's lore, let me create a new Lion Man, update him, give him a cool story, give him a one shot OVA, and let me drop that to my Substack, which is a website, right? Substack allows you to create your own website. So my Substack, not just my profile, my web page, mrshock.substack.com, that is my blog site, publication, host site, where all my articles, essays, short stories, story serials, chapters, and official publications from Total Shock Fiction by way of Ink Runs Red, which is my imprint, those all drop on Substack. People use Substack merely as a newsletter and social media and a bunch of bullshit when we should be using it as a publishing pipeline to publish things directly by way of the internet and then expanding and using it to promote our material for Amazon. I don't know why nobody else uses it that way. And because that's the way it's used, the readers on Substack read your shit for free, skim your shit for free, and don't support your shit by buying a book. Even though they're buying a bunch of other bullshit, they won't spend $10 to $20 on a book, but they'll read your shit for free. So that's a problem with just the way the readers are trained there and the way the platform is being used. But it's still a great archive because I have hundreds of stories, hundreds of one shots, hundreds of OVAs, hundreds of publications, all through my archive on Substack that can be adapted, transformed into TV, movie, comics, animation. And though there's so much writing on there, I couldn't put it all into book form. So I have 30 books on Amazon, but I have 300 plus works on Substack of articles, essays, stories, one shots, characters, mythology, sagas, all different types of shit. So I've rebooted Lion Man. I've created a new Lion Man. This Lion Man, he is a journalist. He's Ethiopian, writes for American publication called Century Magazine, and he goes to an exhibit and gets transformed into Lion Man by an ancient Lion Man statue that's an actual historic relic that was discovered in a cave in Germany. So this is the new Lion Man. That's my Lion Man. He has kung fu pants, a lion head, and he turns into a beast man. He's on some Thundercats shit. This is Lion Man. He can also transform into kaiju size, and he can fight giant sized kaiju monsters. So that's Lion Man. He's Ultraman meets Kamen Rider. That's my Lion Man. He's official canon within Shockverse. He's public domain. So I've adapted him into my canon. My version of Lion Man is my character. No one else can use him, but other people can make variations of Lion Man. But he's the core Lion Man of the Shockverse mythology. He's public domain, just like Dracula or Frankenstein or these other public domain characters. So I've updated the character of Lion Man, and Lion Man became my vehicle for Black fantasy. And that is what has now emerged because I did an article called Beauty in the Blackness where I was coining a term Black New Fiction. And then once I wrote Lion Man, I figured, well, Black fantasy is easier, cooler, and you know exactly what it is. It's darker, bolder, and pushes the boundaries that traditional fantasy won't. And it's Black stories told by Black creators for Black readers and for the Black audience, but also for anyone. Just because a story is about Black characters and written by a Black author doesn't mean someone who's not Black can't enjoy it. I enjoy plenty of white shit, right? Motherfuckers love Star Wars, a bunch of white shit, and Superman, and all this shit. So if we can enjoy all that white shit, why can't people who aren't Black enjoy Black shit? People loved Sinners. Why does it gotta be so isolated to only if it's Sinners or Black Panther or Blade? Like, why can't more people like more shit? And I don't think it has to do with people's necessarily lack of interest in Black culture, because Black culture has always been the dominant force from music to TV and film to all entertainment. The Black film boom of the 70s, which they now label Black exploitation, literally brought Hollywood back to life and revived Hollywood. So it's not that, it's the way the industry has framed things and trained the audiences to see things only in certain lanes and to isolate and minimize certain stories from getting the scope and spotlight that they should get. So my new book is called Black We Are, Roar of the Lion. It introduces my Shock verse updated Lion Man from 1947 to 2026. The updated Lion Man. However, I also wrote a whole new story arc taking my Shock verse lore and canon and combining that with all these different influences I've been absorbing from the Black new fiction space and from Black fantasy. And I've created a new foundational text for Black fantasy. So going forward, Black We Are, Roar of the Lion will be signified as the first official work of Black fantasy officially within this context. There's been many works of Black fantasy. Like I said, Blade, Afro Samurai, Boondocks, those are all Black fantasy. Amaro, those are all Black fantasy. Donald Goines, this is all Black fantasy. But as far as this, me coining the term and presenting it within this scope, Exodus the Darker Blackly from Total Shock Fiction, darker and bolder than traditional fiction, Black stories from Black creators. This is Black We Are, War of the Lion. So it's not out yet. It's going to be coming out. It's already done. It's already written. It's already ready to go. I just haven't released it yet because I had to drop a book that I wrote last month that I didn't release all of March. I just dropped it on the 30th. So Hatred and Longing on American Soil is out. It's also Black fantasy. It's a Gonzo American politics mashup with Black fantasy. All my books are Black fantasy, but going forward is I'm leaning more into the lane and more into the void that I'm seeing for the underserved market of Black readers that want Black stories and Black faces and Black spaces. That's why I've written Black We Are, Roar of the Lion, which is the return of Lion Man. It features Lion Man and a whole bunch of other new Black iconic characters. And of course, eventually this is going to be adapted to TV, film, animation, comic books, all that shit. I have a whole universe of Black characters, Black stories, and I also have characters that aren't Black. I also write other stories of characters who aren't Black. I don't only write Black characters. I write Black fantasy, which is darker and bolder than traditional fantasy. So I still have Black fantasy stories with white characters. So for anyone who's a comic book publisher out there, illustrator, movie, even industry people, even industry people, if the money's right, I won't give up my shit, but I can write some shit. I can come up with some shit. I'll make some money to try and make this shit a little bit cooler. In the meantime, as I'm building up Total Shock Fiction, I can write comics. I can ghost write a book. I can write a script, write a screenplay. I mean, I write quick. I write a book in like a week. I could write a book in a week. I could write a book in less than 2 weeks. I mean, I write quick. So if you need a writer, if you're looking to illustrate some shit, if you're looking to connect some dots, get some movies pitched, get some ideas adapted, hit me up at immenseportals@gmail.com. That's immense, IMMENSE portals @gmail.com. Immenseportals@gmail.com. You can also hit me with a comment. Go over to my Substack. You can DM me on Substack. I'm at Code of Shock on Instagram, at Code of Shock on X. You could DM me on X or Instagram. I'm pretty much everywhere across the board: YouTube, Substack, Instagram, X. But Total Shock Fiction is the home of Black fantasy. I'm gonna be doing more videos and more books on the way. Black We Are, War of the Lion, dropping this month. I could drop it today, tomorrow, next week, 2 weeks. It'll be out this month, so be on the lookout for it. I'm definitely gonna do a video about it when it drops. And I'm already working on the next book, and the next book is the official Black Fantasy Saga Book 1. So Black We Are, War of the Lion is the Black Fantasy Saga launch, but the official book 1, that's what I'm writing right now. And I'm telling y'all, it is fire. So as always, until next time, stay shocked. Exodus, the Darker Blackly. Total Shock Fiction, the home of Black fantasy.